Rawls does not include questions about moral desert in Justice is Fairness. In fact, he seems to say that political liberalism cannot accommodate questions about moral desert. That is, he seems to imply that political liberalism will require us to develop our conceptions of justice in ways that leave aside questions about moral desert. So when we're asking about economic justice, we have some principles for determining what's just and unjust, and they ignore questions about moral desert. The problem is some people might see this as a disproof of Justice is Fairness, or even a disproof of political liberalism as a whole. Why would that be the case? Well, suppose that someone becomes convinced of a certain view about moral desert. Right? Suppose someone becomes convinced that we are entitled to unequal income based on unequal talents. Right? So the fact that LeBron James is more skilled, or especially has more inborn talent than some other basketball players, means that he deserves to get more money. Or suppose someone believes the opposite. Right? Suppose someone believes that it should be based on hard work, right? And the use you make of your opportunities, not based on differences in talent. So difference in talent should not lead to difference in income. Well, either of these people might then say, well, look, here's what moral desert says. Right? Moral desert is important, right? And it's important enough that if a conception of justice systematically excludes questions of moral desert and systematically leads to outcomes that are incompatible with moral desert, well, then we should reject that conception of justice. Right? And if we have reason to think that this is going to happen systematically with various liberal conceptions of justice, and that we can't use questions about moral desert to prefer one conception of justice over the other, then we should reject political liberalism as a whole. Okay? So the person could either say, okay, we're just rejecting justice is fairness on grounds of moral desert, or they could say, we're going to reject the whole framework of political liberalism because our selection of a conception of justice should depend partly on questions about moral desert, and political liberalism doesn't let us bring those questions into play. So if a person adopted that perspective, then he would have good reasons to reject justice is fairness, or perhaps political liberalism as a whole.